Welcome to the Goat Show, the show where we celebrate and debate all things great. My name is Billy, aka Ravine. I'm joined by my co-hosts, Fresh and Deezy. Gentlemen, good to see you today. I think this is going to be an amazing show because today we are going to interview somebody who knows a little something about shows, knows a little something about how to put on a great show, maybe in a professional capacity.
I mean, that's exciting because I know nothing about shows.
This outfit here needs to level up. All right, maybe might need to consult our guest today, Mr. Michael Hagai, about how to take the goat show to the next level. But before we do, Fresh, what do the goats and the people who want to learn a little something about show production, event production, what should they do before we begin?
You gotta like, subscribe, hit the bell, drop a comment, send it to your mom, your dad, your aunt, your uncle.
Send it to that person who said they keep telling you, "Oh, one day I'm gonna put on a, I'm gonna put on a festival, or I'm gonna do this thing, or you know, I'm gonna get some bands together and put together a bill." All right, if that's you and you keep hesitating to try and do that kind of thing, you need to watch this episode because this gentleman who we have here today, a good friend of mine, personal friend of mine, but also an immaculate professional in his field. He is currently the lead production manager for the Hard Rock Hotel, bringing all kinds of acts and making sure they look good and they sound good. Mr. Michael Hagai, welcome to the show, my friend. How you doing today?
I'm excellent, but I just need to know, did you warn all your viewers about that I have no sense of humor whatsoever?
Ooh, I guess we're just going to have to make it a really serious, not humorous interview today. Very straightforward.
It's gonna be a very dry day.
Very dry. Dry indeed.
Very dry. Okay. Only the facts, Jack.
Only the facts. Only the facts. Okay, so what was your question, Ravine?
Okay, let's start with the first very serious question here. If you could have any superpower, what would it be?
If I could point at people, make them shit their pants. Imagine that. You could keep all the others. I just want to be able to watch on TV and some guy is just doing nonsense, just be like, phew.
Yikes.
That's fucking amazing.
No, I mean, I've put some thought into it, I guess.
I gotta say, I think that's probably the best answer to this question that we've ever had. Usually, it's something significant like flying or time travel, but making someone shit their pants on command. It's pretty good.
Yeah, you could work your way up and run the whole world that way. All your competitors.
Would you be like the shitty evil genius?
Yeah, but use my evil for good.
The question is, can you keep pointing at someone and make them shit themselves to death?
Yeah, I guess so. Like through what's it called? Dehydration, right? Eventually. If it just keeps going and going.
Wait, hold on. What kind of? So it's just whatever's in their bowels, right? You can't make them do a certain kind of shit. So like, you can't make it like you can't force. I don't know. You tell me. It's your superpower.
I don't feel like that's a requirement. Yeah, I don't feel like I need to. I just, if someone shits their pants, they're going to, whatever they're doing, they're not going to be able to do it anymore. You know what I mean? So it's like you can literally be like, you can fly around, land somewhere, there's some guy mugging somebody else. If you make them shit their pants, boom, it's going to stop. So, I mean, see, use that evil for good.
Could you imagine opening a poly market bet that somebody shits their pants on this on like a basketball game or something, and then you're just there?
Call up Mike. Yo, Mike, I need you to make LeBron shit his pants in the third quarter.
Exactly. See, now you're getting it. Now you're getting it. It's the most substantive power.
Wow. The more we get into this, the more I'm like, this is.
We could talk about this for hours. All the ways that we can use this. I mean, flying's like, who gives a shit,
Yeah, because anybody of significant power, you make them poop their pants on live television. It's like, I mean, it's funny. I know you're trying to do a serious show here, but that's pretty funny. You're gonna see them like how they react. Their facial expression. Do they stop what they're doing in the middle of talking? Do they try to talk through?
Now that we got that out of the way.
From superpowers to superhero origin stories. Mike, I know you well, man. I know you from NYC, bro. Tell us about where you grew up, life growing up, you're of a certain generation, I believe, the same generation as me, I believe. Tell us about where you're from. What was life like growing up? Your life story, bro.
I mean, I don't have any complaints about that. I grew up with my mom, but without my father. He's from Israel, and they split up when I was like 2 or something. So grew up with my mom, my sister in our grandparents' house, like downstairs, and it was great. It was a regular middle class kind of growing up in Staten Island,
Yeah, Staten Island. That's so what? Okay, so we've talked about this a lot.
which I can never escape forever because it's always in the news and stuff like that. No matter where I'm living.
How would you describe Staten Island culture in terms of New York City? Like it's blue collar.
So Staten Island is where the majority of police officers and firemen and people who work in the city live, because I think that I'm pretty sure that the reason is that you have to live in the city to work as a city, even if you're an inspector or building inspector or something like that. So a lot of them live in Staten Island. And so it was unique in a way that, like I mean, you run a stop sign in the middle of the night and you get pulled over, and then they basically would just let you go because they just assume that your dad is like a sergeant somewhere. And now it's cool. That's not something that's widely known about Staten Island, but anyway, it's true. And so it's different. We would go to the city, and that's like you go to Manhattan or Brooklyn, and we call that the city. But Staten Island had its own scene, had its own parties and stuff like that, and it's the only conservative part of New York City, which makes it very unique. I mean, you look at it, every map, no matter how you move the sliders around, it also was they were the only borough that was pro King George during the Revolution. So it's got a history of counterculture, I guess, in the truest sense of the word.
Right. Well, and the other thing I kind of, reason I bring it up is because, from our, discussions through the years, it's got a very workman's kind of culture, right? Like a very, very down to earth, kind of, personality and culture, and which I feel like you are that type of personality, my friend. So,
You are what you are. You are where you came from to some extent. It is it. It doesn't have the glitzy way about it that the rest of New York City does. People just kind of forget that it's over there. And growing up, we were happy that we didn't have like that we weren't Brooklyn, And I always probably didn't, as I was growing up, appreciate that to the extent that I do now. I kind of thought like, kind of wish I lived in Manhattan or something like that. But now that I think about it, I'm really glad I didn't. It's nice. It's a nice place, and everybody you speak to. If you just walk around anywhere in the world and you ask people like, "What's your thoughts on Staten Island?" If they've even ever heard of it, they all have this different idea of what it is. Because if you read the New York Times, it's one thing, and if you knew somebody from there, it's a completely different thing. And so it's got this weird way about it. I don't know how else to say it.
yeah. No, I am curious about, because you grew up in the New York City area during the 80s, 90s. I mean, you've seen New York over the years. I'm just kind of curious, when you were growing up, like, how has New York changed significantly over the time that you were there compared to, say, when you left, or even into now?
Yeah, it did. It did the way the most of the country has, where it didn't really matter all that much what you thought or who your friend. It mattered more like who your friend group was. You probably remember that the world was kind of like that. It really didn't matter all that much what your personal opinion on things were. You can get into arguments with people, but back then, growing up, like, I kind of feel bad for people nowadays because of how much something like that matters. They don't really get to have any fun. But
I feel like New York, especially. I mean, New Yorkers are known to be, kind of up, forthright, upfront. I'm walking here, whatever that, that whole stereotype is. Like, do you feel like that's accurate about people from New York? And
yeah, definitely. And it's where the concept that people are rude there comes from. And it's really just that I'm going to give you an example. There was this guy I worked with. He was from France. And I didn't know him that well. I only worked with him a short amount of time. But I remember that we were driving a truck to an event. I was pretty young, probably like 19 or something, and he was about my age. And we were on, I think, the Alton building on 18th Street doing a party, probably, I think, for Red Bull or something like that. And, it was it was the Scion car. Remember when that came out? So we were on our way there. So I don't even know. I don't know when that was. It had to be like 2002 or 2003. And he's on the phone with his brother, and they're having this crazy argument, back and forth. And he was being like nasty to him and all that. And when he got off the phone, I was like, geez, man, what happened? He's like, what do you mean? Totally didn't understand that. That's just like French people. They're not necessarily the way they appear to your ears. He's like, he wasn't having an argument. That was just being boisterous, like European people are, like how Italians are, and you feel like it's Italians are yelling at each other, but not neither.
Yeah, see, I would assume Italians would be more, but I guess, yeah, French people. I guess if you're, maybe it's just sort of like if you're.
So like that thing about them being rude, it sounded like they were being rude to each other, but I didn't understand French at all. Still don't. So that's kind of like what people think about New Yorkers, and they're kind of like in your face, and it's like, but they're just going to tell you how it is. It's fast. Everybody runs like everywhere. There's no time you got to know what the person is thinking, because he's down the block by the time, like a minute later or whatever. And it's fast. And if you can't keep up, then you get the wrong idea. I mean, you see, if we watch like 30 Rock or something, they nailed the New Yorker in that show. And they absolutely did. Like, everybody finishes their sentences real quick, and then they're gone, and something else is happening. And that's just kind of the way it is, And, if you're not used to it, and you just show up, or it's a certain way on TV, and you get there and it's not the way you expected, and yeah, you could see why people think that way. But the truth is, New Yorkers just love each other, and they just do.
I will follow up Ravine's question with, when it gets colder out, do people get more loud and kind of angry with each other?
I'm not sure. I guess, I remember that we had, I think it was maybe it's 2012, where we had like 3 storms in a row, and they were all really big. And, people just abandoned their cars in the middle of the street because there's just no way to, you had to come back like 3 days later and find out where it was. And it was mostly still there, and so, no, I think actually like that's when they band together. Now that, I never really thought of that, but I feel like when those kinds of things happen, they're more, they gel more, because it's like a shared experience.
The opposite is not the case in Arizona, because when it gets hot out, everyone turns to assholes.
Yeah, but hot is worse than cold, right? Like, cold, you can put on layers, but like when you're hot, you can get naked. It's still hot.
Can't escape.
Yeah. But I'm from Toronto, and I think that it's pretty much the same here, where like we're pretty crass. We're like, we just say what we mean. There's no real time to bullshit. But like wintertime comes, and we're helping each other shovel the cars out. We're like, banding together. But summertime, I think we're more pricks.
That's only really like July, right?
June to August. At least in Toronto. It's the same as New York.
Right. I think in Montreal for some reason. But I was in Toronto. It was pretty cold when I was there.
I mean, it's pretty much the same as New York. We pretty much share weather.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about the beginnings of your journey, Mike. You're a big music fan. I'm a big music fan. We've listened to tons and tons of records and recommended albums back and forth.
We threw a party together. Don't bury the lead, bro. We threw a party together, and it was pretty epic.
When we were out in LA, that's where where we met, and we threw some dope parties out there. I won't go into too much detail because we might end up on a list somewhere.
You might want to save it for a reunion episode.
Oh, we might have to do that, actually. Yeah. There's some of the people we've had on the show who were at some of these parties. But I want to ask you, man, like, when did that love of music begin? When did it, and what were some of the artists that kind of inspired you, in that regard?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the first serious music scene I got into was drum bass scene in New York in the late '90s. 97 to like 2004. There was a couple really great clubs, the Cooler, Baktoon, and it was like clubbier clubs like Twilo. But back then it was like down on Little West 12th, and you go see, or under the Manhattan Bridge, there was a place, I forget the name of it. And, you would see Aphrodite or DJ Soul Sling, Africa Bombata. They would come through. Yeah, Goldie. I was at a Goldie show and Bjork was there, and I didn't know who she was yet. And I think that the drum and bass breakbeat scene in New York is really what I first got into something where I was like, trying to meet those people, and also I got into audio and production largely through that, and there were other influences too, but there was when you're young and you have these moments where you don't quite know what you're doing with your life, and it's like existential. It's not like when you're an adult. It's quite a bit more serious if you have a moment like that at 44 or something. But when you're a kid,
Bro, I'm having a moment like that right now. Damn, I'm lost in the wind. I need guidance, bro. Anyway, continue.
Yeah, so that's how my love for music really began. Is going out, going into Manhattan, going into the city, like we say, and meeting people outside, smoking cigarettes out front of the club, the bar, and going inside, and it smells terrible and all that, and that scene that's why it's a scene, and so that was where it started with me.
Were you the guy that would go up to the speaker and like be right next to the speaker and have it blast you with bass?
Yeah, sometimes. So, I don't know. It depends on the mood, right? Like sometimes there were just idiots there, so, especially a little later on, like more into the 2000s, and just wanted to hang out in the back because people are just like thinking they're breakdancing and all kinds of, you know, every scene explodes, after a while, but like it was pretty pure. I think the first performance using Ableton back then, and it wasn't that great, to be honest. It was really repetitive, and we left in the middle of that set. I forgot who that guy was, but later on, I came to appear. I'm like, wow, he was doing that. And it wasn't even the year 2000 yet. He was using Ableton 4 or something. That was pretty cool. I'm happy to say.
I think you were DJing at one point, right? Like doing gigs and stuff like that. Like when was that happening?
No, I didn't do that till much later in life. I always kind of wanted to do that, but you see through things through the lens of the age you are, and I didn't think I was like cool enough or whatever, to like. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I hung out with these people. My good friend Rufus, he's lives out in Montana now, and he was always trying to egg me on to do those sorts of things, but
you were always DJing all the events we did in LA. So, I mean, and you were great. So, I don't know, man. Time to end your career. Sorry, Hard Rock. Mike's going back to DJing.
No, there could be a partnership there. What are you talking about?
What should I call myself?
Oh, shit. Call yourself DJ Hard Rock.
We have our friend Phil that moved to Mexico. He wanted me to come down there like on weekends and DJ on the boat. He's brokering boats now, right? And I'm like, I don't know. Yeah, maybe we'll see. I mean, it's kind of a matter of opportunity cost. Like I really like DJing. It's kind of fun, and you think about it the whole day, and stuff like that. And I don't think I'd want to do it like a business.
Yeah. And I know you. I mean, I know that you actually really do love like what you do, and you take it very seriously, and you're excellent at what you do. So, let's talk about that. Let's talk about your. So what was the sort of stepping stones towards, let's just say the beginnings of, doing actual, production of any kind related to music. And I know that for a while there you were, I think you're hanging out with Rachael Ray or something. Like what's the story there? When did you start stepping towards a more professional career?
I didn't work for Rachael Ray directly. I normally I wouldn't even mention a client. I generally speak in vague terms when it comes to clients, not because I feel like, they would care. It just like, it's better that they hear that that if they come across it, that I didn't mention it. But I know that Rachel and John would encourage me to talk about the time I spent with them, which was my prime years on tour with John, her husband, as the audio engineer and later on tour manager.
How did that even transpire in the first place? Like, how did you meet them, or how did you land that gig? And what was the gig exactly?
So, if there's anybody that I could say knows a lot about music, it's John Cusimano. He's married to Rachael Ray. That guy lives and breathes music, and the music he writes is amazing, and his band is phenomenal. They're called The Cringe. And I got a call from a guy named Rich Saccoletti, who was a client of a client or former client from a place I worked, the first place I worked, called Pro Show, and they were based in Staten Island. Was Frank Provenzano. He recently passed away. RIP. Frank Provenzano, and before I got there, his wife was Lindsay Showman. So they were like, it's Pro Show, perfect name, like just so good. Couldn't have thought of anything better. So they're still around. It's run by this guy Joe Russo, and so Rich Saccoletti was a client. He used Pro Show at a lot of his events all around the city and stuff like this. Most people would not know who Rich Saccoletti is, but if you know the Brooklyn concerts, he was the production manager on those. The famous Brooklyn concerts when Marty Markowitz was the borough president, and he put a lot of money into that. They brought the Temptations and Supremes and stuff. I keep shaking the camera. He called me up and asked if I wanted to drive the state. So Savion Glover, the tap dancer, Rich had built this special stage for him, 4 pieces, 4x8, and they can go in any configuration. They had microphones like built in, a certain kind of mic called Barkisberry microphones that they're designed for harps and pianos and stuff like that. So they're a little bit like a pickup, but they're a very specialized microphone. He built them into it in an enclosure, and sounded really good, So, but they were like a musical instrument. They couldn't be transported with the rest of the equipment. They really needed kid gloves, So Savion was going on tour. It was right after the time that he did all the motion capture for Happy Feet. And it was a Savion Glover Does the Classics or something. And he had 12 musicians with him. And, they did classical music and he would tap dance too. It was pretty cool. And I was just the truck driver, just the guy and I just drove around with his custom made dance stages in a truck, and the truck would show up. They would all load in. The next day I would drive in like, hey, I'm here. And they would take it out, and that's it. Then I would just hang out in whatever city it was. So Rich asked me if I would do that. And I was like, not working a lot. So, Pro Show was productions and seasons, and that's what's great about my job now is there really isn't. It's a full-time salaried job. But the freelancers, which make up the majority of the industry, they're always kind of suffering, checking in with you like, hey, do you have anything? As a PM, I get those texts all the time, and it's like, sorry, man, I really don't actually. You wash my car, and it's about the best I could do. So it's a reality.
Mike, you live in big time now. Getting people shine your shoes, clean your car.
Anybody who works in production knows exactly what I'm talking about. It's rough in the summer.
Sorry, real quick detour. I mean, in your opinion, in this day and age, I mean, someone who wants to get to where you are, wants to be someone who's leading productions and all that stuff, is that what they got to start somewhere, right? I mean, you got to tell them, hey, listen, take whatever job you can get and just work it, right?
Yeah, but be interested in it,
What do you mean by that?
Well, there's no faking it. You're either there for $1, or you're there because you love it, and I could tell you 9 times out of 10, anybody I meet, they got that way about them that that this is they believe that they're doing what they were born to do. Very few people make it in the production because it's extremely demanding. It's a labor of love, truly. And very few people ever get far enough. Like they wind up doing something else if they're really just there to get a paycheck, because you're asked to do things that maybe are outside your comfort zone. Like climb up a truss to climb up, like there's a storm coming in and you have a light that's way up there. I mean, everything's waterproof now, but you'd have to climb up like 25 feet with a garbage bag and throw it over there. And that's not for people who are, just looking to get a buck or whatever. And, I mean, every industry's like that in a way, but productions, it's a special industry. Let's just put it that way.
So basically you're driving a truck, and then how do you leapfrog into, getting actually involved in the audio side of things? Because I think that's where you started, right? You started with audio first and then kind of went from there.
Yeah, audio was definitely, I was reading there's this impossible to understand book. I still don't fully understand it. It's called the Yamaha Sound Engineer's Handbook. It's a black covered paperback book, and anybody who's into audio knows about it, but they pick it up and there's no way to know what is written in there. Professionals don't know. Yamaha are just a bunch of crazy engineers, and they put together basically a book about physics, and it's called the Sound Engineer's Handbook. And so I bought that and I was like trying to read it. And a lot of the times I didn't understand what I was reading, but I just kept powering through it. And there were some analogies in that book that made sense to me, like describing sound waves as a ripple in a pool, and so if you drop it in the middle, the ripples get out, but they get wider apart as they travel, right? And then they hit the edge and they bounce back. And that's basically how sound works in a room. And, I remember learning that from that book, and I still use that analogy to explain to people today. If they don't have that basic understanding. And so reading that book was just fascinating. I'm like, I can't believe I because I knew that I learned by just immersing myself in it. And the fact that this was sort of like a lot of walls in there that I couldn't get past. I'm like, this will be a challenge. I got to do this, And I was working at the production company, but I was just carrying speakers around, But that's, some guys went into lighting because it's like fun and flashy. And then video wasn't a very big thing back then, but now it's the dominant part of the industry because of LED walls and newer technologies for, transport of signal and stuff like that. And it's a lot lighter than it used to be. Like everything weighs less because it's digital. And so, like there are things were just too heavy to put on a truck, and they would just eat too much gas to get it across the country. And that's just not the case anymore. And, you can basically do it all. So, but I wound up in audio because it was the most personal thing. It was how I dealt with those musicians, and I preferred very much working monitors because because a lot of people don't understand that there's an entirely different concert going the other direction, starting from that curtain line going to the band. And they have to hear completely different stuff than you in the audience need to hear, right? Like the guitarist maybe wants to hear the kick drum, but he doesn't need the hi-hat. That's just going to confuse him or whatever, and so each one of them have and you got to really think it through. And if they ask you for something, they'll go like, hey, they're yelling at you and they're pointing, and you have to like, what is he saying? Well, what could he be? You have to you kind of got to be in their head and be like, well, there's only 3 things in his monitor. So it must've been the vocal. So you look at the board and go like, that's kind of low, and bring that up. And it goes, it gives you a thumbs up. And that was like the fun part, in my opinion.
Just to bring it back to the center though. So with the Rachael Ray thing, so you're driving a truck. How do you get to the point where, were you asking him questions like, about audio, or like how did you get involved in that side of things? Like, and the reason I asked is because there may be someone out there right now that wants to, move in a certain direction. Maybe they want to move towards video, or they want to move towards, but they feel like they're stuck in a certain thing. How are you able to say, okay, I'm driving trucks right now, but I'm now doing X, Y, and Z to be able to get into audio?
Well, I know. I think we lost track there for a second because let me clarify. The first thing that I was doing with Rich, who became a sort of mentor to me, we fell out, unfortunately. I hope that the relationship is repaired one day. But in any case, Rich had called me to do the Savion Glover job, and that went on, and then it was done. And then there was part of another tour, and then it was done. And then I didn't hear from him for a while. He would call me occasionally, You know, he had a thing at the Jade Room at the Copacabana or something, or you know, he used to do this yearly thing for 95.5 PLJ, which was way up in Yonkers, you know, like a charity thing. And so then one day he called me and he asked, you know, he's like, I've been working with this band and I need to take some time off. Would you want to fill in? I'm like, yeah, sure. Like, let's meet them. What's the deal? And it turned out to be, you know, The Cringe, which was John Cusimano's band. And I wound up staying on as the like roadie sort of thing. But there was a lot more involved in that than just a roadie. They're famous. Like they're already famous, but they're kind of a small band. So there was an element to it where we stayed in the best hotels. I mean, like we flew first class, you know, to go to Nebraska and play for 7 people. It was the craziest thing. It was just the most contradictory thing. And I loved it, you know, and I think from like 23 to 29 or something, I was on and off with them. So I like grew up, like came of age with those guys from the band. James, the guitarist, we went through a couple bassists. Sean Pelton, the drummer from Saturday Night Live, was the drummer for that band. We drank so much whiskey, man. Like so much. Everywhere we went, that finest like Oban and all kinds of really nice Lefroy. It was great. Great time. But that's how I wound up doing that. It was Rich. Rich called me up, you know, and learned so much from that guy. I mean, he was like him. And there's a, oh man, I forget his name right now. There's someone else. It'll come to me. 2 people that they didn't even realize it, but they mentored me on my way through the journey of production.
So I have a question for you. How much of that do you think was, you know, you putting yourself out there and networking and taking action, and how much of that do you think was right place, right time, kind of, you know, not luck, but you were placed and you found your way, you know?
Yeah, I think I know what you're asking. It's half and half, and it went through seasons in a way. Like there were times where I didn't have a lot of cash, and I'm like, I can't believe I got into this. You know, this is so like, it's so like flying by the seat of my pants. You know, and then I would go, you know, like go around, you know, look up online a bunch of places and just show up there and try to see if like they were hiring. You know, nobody really did online interviews at that time, and if they just got like resumes, whatever, they just threw them in the trash where they belong. Like there's no reason to. You need, like I said in production, if someone shows up, it shows that they're going to do what you expect of what's necessary. You know, and so that's the way you would get jobs. So I mean, there was a time, I mean, like 3 days in a row, I went to like 12 different places around the city, and you had to hustle, and especially in the off season. And then other times, you know, Rich didn't have to call me, and he did. I didn't have to be available, you know, but I was, and he did call me, and that was a really great thing for my career because that was where I learned the management part of the job from him.
Man, I definitely want to get into that because that's probably one of the most fascinating things whenever we have a conversation is all the aspects of that. But to add on to what Deezy, you know, what Deezy's saying or asked is just in general in life, like what's your philosophy on the idea of availability? You know, because I think we live in a culture where people are like, look, if you ain't paying me, I don't want to do nothing. All right. I'm not gonna go out here and go the extra mile and do this thing and show up and do all this shit. I'm just here because I need to get paid, and that's it. What's your philosophy on that? Like,
That isn't necessarily a vice. That isn't necessarily a vice at all. It's just that certain industries lend themselves to that more than production does, and some less probably. Like I would imagine being in finance is more something where that, or being, let's say, a consultant for a law firm or something, you know, where they're like, show me the money and I will absolutely do everything you need me to do and probably more, you know? And I don't know. I've just never seen that really work for anybody in my particular industry. just to be completely frank about it. But my philosophy on it is there's a time and place for that. There's an appropriate venue for that. And good luck trying to get that to work for you in production. Although, I mean, the world's changing a lot about it. There's nearly, I mean, I think there were 85 million boomers, 85 million baby boomers that were born. And that was that was the market for 2 generations, and then Gen Z came around. There's 65 million of them. Sorry, Gen X. Yeah, Gen X, it was 65 million. There are 40 million Zoomers. There is nobody around to buy anything. And those people who were born starting like 2000, 2004, 2008, they're entering the workforce this year. And there's very few of them. So it lends itself to the job security for a guy like me. I'll be employable for at least the next 20 years at almost any job I want. And, I mean, the next thing after production manager is producer, event producer. It's not like you could really do that at the Grammys or something, but there's, well, I say all that to say that this attitude that you were saying, where I was like, show me the money attitude, might work now at some startups and stuff in production, because it's a little, you got to kind of follow the worker. And if that's just if all the available people to work are that way, you have to, you need somebody to do it, So that may be more true to a further extent now than it used to be, but I doubt by much, to be honest. You really need to love it, at least historically speaking.
Okay, so let's get into, because there's levels through the years. So you start, working with the Cringe. You were in that gig for a while. Through that you meet Rachael Ray and this type of thing. Like, at some point you decide that, New York ain't it anymore. Dunzo, you want to go to LA where the stars play.
Oh my God. I was not as excited as you would expect to go to LA. It was a little bit of a lateral move. I left the Cringe in the middle of like a tour, more or less. It's not like they were opening for various acts, right? So there'd be like we would go out for 3 days with the Meat Puppets or something, and we would do 3 shows for them. And then and then it would be like 2 weeks we're not doing anything. And they would go, and then they'd be out with someone else. I basically told, so my friend Dave he was my roommate at the time. He was my roommate prior to that. And then I moved back to Staten Island. We were living in New Jersey together. And he was really into home automation. He thought that was like the next big market for stuff, right? And so I was working with him when I wasn't with the Cringe, designing, because I have system design at this point knowledge. Now it's like production system, but it's only a shorthand to, it's only a short learning curve, I guess, to be able to apply that knowledge to something that's similar. And so, he was getting, he got this contract with Verizon where they had this product called, I don't even know what they called it. I don't remember. It was really bad product. Like, it was basically an anchor product for them to, just get more equipment in people's houses, because there was a lot of competitive nature to, cable internet providers at the time, especially at that time. And so they just wanted more stuff in people's houses. It was not well thought out. Didn't work that great, but basically he had the contract for that in New Jersey, New York area. And so I was like going around installing these little cameras and like little lighting controllers and just configuring it and all that. But he wanted to take that to another level. He wanted to move to LA, and he wanted to buy houses and fix them up, which at that point already wasn't that lucrative. The banks caught on. They had all kinds of fees on top of that. You were lucky if you cleared like 10K buying and flipping houses. It wasn't like it was in the 90s, 80s, I guess. But he thought, and he was absolutely right about this, that if you can find just the right house in the right up and coming neighborhood and you turn it into a smart home, you can make like 120K on a house still. And he was right. We went out there and we did that. He put up the money because he had a bunch of good investments going, and he had a good project manager job at a pharmaceutical company at work from home. So he was able to do that. And then I put up all the technical skill. I had the tools. I got whatever tools I didn't even. We went out to LA and did that. And for a number of years, and that worked out really well.
Let me understand. So you're saying that you would buy a house and then you would fix you would make it a smart home, like you would pimp it out, and then people moving to LA want to live that LA lifestyle. Would just they buy those houses.
Exactly right.
Very. That's interesting, man. I don't think I've ever heard of that.
It was a good business model. It really was. It was a perfect business model for just that time, just those years. And it went on just as long as it needed to before, and we got out of it before we lost anything. So we made good. We did really well in LA. So you may not have even known that, but that's why I originally came to LA. I didn't go there to do any kind of production.
Yeah, I remember you're doing home automation, all that stuff when we first met, but I didn't realize that was what was going on. That's interesting, man. That's super cool, man.
I was still doing it a little at that time, but by then I was already working as a production manager out there.
Okay, so you transition to production management. Like, how does that whole thing happen?
I was just looking for extra work. I had a lot of money saved, but I knew that it wouldn't last long. So I'm like, the Cringe had found somebody else, and he's probably very good at what he does, I'm sure. And I was all the way out in LA. They would, like, if they didn't have anybody, they would fly me out to every event, I'm sure. But I didn't feel like that was I didn't feel like going backward in time and in experience, because it was yes, I was in charge of a lot of stuff, but it was also a lot of work. And I'm like, kind of like, 30, I was like in my mid 30s now. And I'm like, man, what do I got to do to run a team of people? Like, but I didn't quite have all the skills I needed at that time. But so what I started doing was there was a bunch of companies that do wedding bands, for weddings, bar mitzvahs and stuff like that. So I started getting in with those guys. So I'm working on the weekends doing that, doing audio basically. And there was this guy that I worked with a lot. I liked him a lot. Forget his name at the moment, but he's like, you should call. So I'm like, yeah, there's more companies around, but I couldn't find him. And he's like, you should call this guy Nathan. He's in charge of 90210 Entertainment. And I'm like, that's a really unfortunate name, like how on the nose you have to be, but turns out they were like the most.
Right. I mean, Beverly Hills, man.
Yeah. 90210 Entertainment. So Nathan is a Persian guy. He's from a Persian family. The whole family owns this place, 90210 Entertainment. They have one partner that's not a member of their family, but the father, the two brothers, they're the main stakeholders of the company, So he's like, yeah. So he sent me his number, and I said, hey, are you hiring audio engineers, right? And he's like, yeah, sure. We always hiring, Now they're all their clients are Persian. They basically, there's him and one other guy in LA that do all the Persian weddings. They're going to hire some Italian band to play, that is not going to do that. You're Persian or you're Armenian, because they understand each other to some extent, and I think I was like the only non-Persian person working there for a while. So they called me. So he's like, yeah, send me your resume. I didn't have one made. So I made one for him, and I put on there that I was like the tour manager. I talked myself up a bit, not like I'm the only person to ever do that.
Yeah, I mean, I have to imagine in what you do that there's a lot of people that are just doing gigs wherever, doing all, you know what I'm saying? Like, and I always wonder, like, yeah, if somebody asks you for a resume, it's like, how do you describe, you know what I'm saying? Like what it is that you did all these years and all the little nuances of things. And then they don't even care. They're like, so like, how do you present yourself in a way where they have confidence? They're like, okay, this person knows what they're doing. Or is it just sort of kind of like a formality and then you're just going to have to sink or swim?
Yeah. Well, it's a little bit like how real estate is, where, you can just go work at a real estate company. You're either going to sink or swim. They're willing to give anybody a shot, because they rely on the natural kind of sales the reading people kind of sales that you don't really learn, that you can't really learn. I don't think that could be taught. There's different opinions on that, but there's an intuition that to sales, and entrepreneurship and things like that, and in production that's very true as well. So I have a feeling that. So let me jump back for 1 minute. So I was imagining that I would get audio gigs with these guys, but I emphasized enough on my resume the tasks that I had under the cringe, which was a very widespread. One day I would just be moving things around for them. Other times it's like I'm negotiating them. I'm getting the payout from the venue and stuff like that. So it's accounting, stuff like that. And so Nathan recognized that they happened to be looking for a lead production manager, like the production manager, they had somebody on their way out or whatever. I don't know the full story, but it doesn't matter that much. So they were looking for someone, and he was willing to give me a shot. When I got there, I expected to just meet with him, but all the partners were there, and they asked me a lot of questions, and they didn't really warn me that it was like an interview, and I was fine with that. I said, yeah, like, let's do it. What do you need done? Well, and he liked the attitude, and I mean, I had to build a lot of things like my worksheets and stuff to keep track of vendors and stuff like that. And I looked up a lot of stuff, but I had a little bit, I definitely had the drive for it, but I had just enough experience to make that work for me and make that a good deal for them. That they were getting what they needed, which was to basically, they were busy people. There were weekends. We did 14 events from a Thursday to Sunday.
14 events.
Yeah. Some of them were just a DJ. Others were big shows. And let me tell you something. Persians and Indians, they're the ones that spend money on all their money on weddings. That's what they literally work for. Roses, $100,000 worth of roses. I mean, it's just like, in LA, it's up 3 notches, from anywhere else. So some of them were, we had systems that were like, you just basically, it's all ready to go. You just QC it when it comes in and you roll it out the door on Friday again. And then there were other things that were a lot more complicated, but the amount of detail that they needed, I was like super psyched about putting that into it. Persians they're like this everywhere, by the way. It's not just in America. It's not just the ones in LA, but they're like, yeah, Mike, everything's great. No problem. And then on Tuesday, I find out they called Novaj, like the other brother, and, tried to bitch him down to they complained about 5 different things that were no problem on the event. They just needed a reason. They just needed something. Right. So, and he's like, and, at first I was uncomfortable with that. I'm like, oh, I worked really hard. He's like, Mike, don't worry. He's like, just believe me, it's fine. Like, this is the way it works. That he knew that business that way.
So, okay, well, let's talk about this, because something that fascinates me about what you do, because I've seen it firsthand. I've gone to some of your, a couple of the things that you've done, and you've taken me behind the scenes, and I'm always amazed most about your ability to manage so many moving pieces. That's a skill set that I suffer with. Like, I'm very much this is the thing that needs to get done. All right, I'm going to focus on that first. Then I'm going to do this. Then I'm going to do that. And in your case, you have to be able to have like however many things happening at once and be able to manage that. And also, you're dealing with people in each of these things and they have different personalities and they have different ways they want to work. So what is your philosophy on managing or on multitasking? Let's start there. How do you look at multitasking? What are the most effective ways to multitask?
Well, there's 2. First of all, there's no such thing as multitasking. That doesn't exist. Brain does not work that way. But I know what you mean. And it's a colloquialism, right? So first of all, a lot of confusion happens when you finally realize that multitasking includes dealing with multiple people and meeting each one of them at the level they're at. Like, and not over, like, for instance, the word no is the worst. Even if the answer is no, you don't say no, right? You can't, because because if somebody asks for something, they're probably willing to pay for it. That's like one really important concept that you need to be able to get. Like, there's no like, oh,
you mean like a client?
Right, a client, exactly. And there's different opinions even within the leadership of the client's hierarchy. Like
What might be like an example of that where a client wants something more than you can give, and you have to give them the correct answer?
I did an event for Lockheed Martin when I was in Orlando, which was like, so it's like 3 years ago, and there was some confusion about whether or not the presenters were going to have a handheld microphones or they were going to have lavaliers. So I, there was a breakdown in communication on their side of it.
You mean like a mic that goes on there?
Lapel mic, yeah.
Gotcha. Okay.
And so both they're really for different purposes, both of those microphones. But I'm not sure that people really understand that. It's more like the lavalier costs a little bit more, but then you have to have somebody there to put it on properly. The trade-off is you have a consistent distance between the mouth and the microphone, right? On the other hand, if you have a handheld microphone, some people like put it like this and swallow it like a wrapper or something. And then on the other hand, somebody who never held a microphone, like giving a best man speech or something, and they're like, don't understand. It's like down here, and so you have to be ready for that, right? And so there was confusion about that. So I just brought a bunch of both, right? Turns out that the leadership that were coming, they were from the United Nations. Maybe there was a language barrier. He wanted the countryman, they call it, the one that comes to your cheek, and motivational speakers use it. For no reason, it just looks cool. There's no real difference. It's really for theater. That's really what they're for. Because of the costumes, you can't really get there is no lapel. So that's really what headset mics are for. But it's a thing that some people prefer. Because you can get them in certain colors, nude, and you can get cocoa if you're darker and stuff. And so some people prefer it. But it's a specialty item. You really can't get it. You really can't just get it overnight.
So that type of item is more expensive, and they want that, but then but who's saying? Are you saying no to them, or somebody else saying no? And then when you have to say no, what's the way that you do it?
Yeah, so the person showed up and they were expecting that, and they were very upset about it. And Ray, my client from Lockheed, was like, "What can we do?" And I said, "Ray, I can't get that. I'm not going to be able to get that." I called. I think I called one vendor I knew that had those. And he's like, "Nope, I sent them all to Vegas last weekend, man. We got a big thing going on out there. I don't want to tell you. Sorry."
So they're in limited supply. Like, I mean, you have to be.
Yeah.
Let's come back to that. I want to talk about preparation in a second. But so how did you break the news, and what happened?
So luckily, he was the liaison. He was really the person dealing with his guests. He was a very production-minded person. He had worked at a radio station for many, many years, and then he was working at Lockheed as like the media guy. But he knew what was going on, And so it's a woman. So I was saying, this dress, this is really nice. We can put this on. This is like designed for a microphone, this dress. You'd be much better off with a lapel. It'll sound better, and we can hide it and like right here. And so I don't remember exactly. I don't remember exactly what happened, but the answer was no. And it has had to be done. And there's no way to teach that. There's no way to predict that. I don't think there's any real way to plan that. You just need to kind of look at a person walking across the room and like, here's how I'm going to deal with this. I'm sorry, it's an intuition. I really don't even know how to explain it. But the point is that if they ask for it, they probably are willing to at least listen to whatever the price is, right? So that's a fun story, but
I mean, I guess I would say the point is that the years of experience, the years of you just doing whatever needs to be done, I feel like the skill set you develop by doing gig after gig or whatever is that shit goes wrong. Shit doesn't go expected all the time. Probably most of the time, I have to imagine.
Almost never. It never does.
Never. Yeah.
No, but the point is, I'm a classic planner. I have a lot of worksheets. They all have a different purpose. I keep an email trail for everything. Even if there are some people that refuse to answer emails and they call you, and I don't answer, I don't pick up the phone. I make them respond to my email. They have to, because I need to know. I need to have that written down. Especially now that I work for Hard Rock, it's extremely important to do that. we can get into that. But the point of the matter is that you plan so that you can deal with the curveball. And that's the point. It's not so that you plan until everything goes perfectly. You plan so that you have the bandwidth to deal with the curveball. The curveball will come every single time. There's always something. It's okay. It's the nature of the industry, but the more you're able to plan those things out, the better you are to deal with things on site. And that's probably true in a lot of situations or whatever. But I think it's most important in production is that you're ahead of the game on that.
Okay, so going back to kind of the previous idea that there's no such thing as multitasking. So I guess what you're saying is the planning process has to be done, and that's where you work out most of the things that you're anticipating has to be done. I'm assuming on like a timeline, a Gantt chart or something like that. Like this has to be done this day at this time. This has got to be, and it's like tightly managed, but there's contingencies related to that when it comes to, okay, this person wants a special mic. Okay, shit. All right, well, let's look at everything and figure out like what can we work here and what can we figure out.
The way I make that work for me is when, yes, so 100%. What I found was that it gets confusing when you have a lot of different workbooks, right? So it used to be that what I would make like one for vendors to keep track, and it would have all the logistics on it, right? And so are they delivering or are we delivering? Are they taking it to the venue or are they going to the warehouse? Then is the warehouse going to bring it? And then what time? And that starts to get really confusing. So you have like a nice long spreadsheet for just the vendors, right? And then, you have also like what's coming. Well, and you have another worksheet. This was the mistake I was making for a big part of my career, was that it gets confusing when you're jumping around. So I spent a really long time trying to figure out how do I get all that information into one workbook, right? And that took a long time, but I have now my workbook and everybody loves it, and I'm happy to share with people too, because they're going to manage it their own way. They're not going to do it the way I do it,
But by workbook, you mean you made a manual for how to manage an event or how to?
Oh, I'm talking about an Excel sheet, basically.
Okay, an Excel sheet. Okay, gotcha.
Right. So, and just to keep track of you, I have a blank one that I drop it into the folder. So I have the discovery process, which is where, and I'm not sure if other production managers do it this way. I have no idea. But the way it happens for me is, you get initial emails and you have like you're going to have a conversation maybe with the client. And, have they done it before? You can get the documents from the previous year and they can tell you what's going to be different. So this is a discovery, just like how lawyers call it, right? And so you can create a folder with discovery, drop the old floor plans on there. If it doesn't exist, then, you could, you put the notes in there and you're working from that. You have to build a plot. So I do that in Vectorworks, which is a little bit like a CAD program, like how engineers use it, but it's specifically for the entertainment industry. It's like a really expensive, ridiculously expensive software.
And that's like, it's almost like, I think you've shown me that before. I think it's like a floor plan and it has everything where it is. And you can look with somebody at that and go, okay, like, should we move the speakers here? Should we move this? That's kind of what you're talking about.
Yeah. To make a scale drawing. And then, you can order a bunch of equipment, but you really need to, at least I do, maybe, and not everybody has to do this, but the way it works for me is I start planning it, even if it's a very small thing. And I start drawing it out, because then you get inspiration from that, right? You say like, oh, I should probably check with them. I think they're going to put drape there. Maybe I need to order the drape. That's kind of a big hole, like between this wall and that stage, and then you're looking at it and you're like, well, what if you're sitting over here? Then you're looking at the side of the screen. And so like that really helps with making sure that you have all your T's crossed and I's dotted and stuff like that. So that's where I'm working after I have information from discovery. You can't really build a plot unless you either am talking to them or you have the information roughly what they need to do. But they're kind of looking at you to design it also. They don't necessarily want it to be the exact same thing as last year, or maybe they have no idea the way they want it, right? So that's an important process for that reason. And you start ordering the equipment. Here, where I work now, we own a lot of really great equipment, but inevitably you have to rent something. So it's like, well, who has that? Do I even need it? How much does it cost? Is it in their budget? And all of that happens in that linear way until the point that, and you You can put in a whole, like, you know, you're going to need an audio and a video and a lighting engineer. You don't know if you need stagehands yet, but you can you can put them on notice. You know, I might need a stage. What I found, which was like holding me back a lot, was that vendors are perfectly fine to take an order that is over the top and then you cancel things later on. They would just much rather have it reserved for you. And I would always kind of wait until the last minute, which was a big mistake earlier in my career, you know, thinking that that would be confusing for them. But they have their own ways to track that. Nobody ever told me. I kind of just learned it on my own, that like eventually I'm like, no, I should get ahead of this. I should just tell them, I think I'm going to need this and I think I'm going to need that. I'm certain I'm going to need this, right? And it turns out people appreciate that a lot more, and it makes things a lot easier.
Yeah, yeah. Let's I want to kind of go back to the sort of the last two kind of stages of, you know, where you kind of leapt to. So you're doing these productions in LA. And because I also want people out watching to understand like the scope of some of these things that you've done. So your next step was when you went to Orlando and you started getting into corporate events. Can you talk about how that happened? And then, you know, some of the, you know, maybe some of the biggest events that you put together with the company that you're with there.
Yeah, sure. That's a company that's most people are familiar with, called Encore. They used to be called PSAV, which the joke is that means piss, shit, and vomit. But they changed their name anyway. So, or please send another vehicle if you're trying to be PC about it. Encore's got a very challenging business model, unfortunately for them. They have to give up a lot of their commission to the hotels, and so a lot is but they're a captive audience, that they're in the hotels.
What does that mean exactly? So the hotel has like, they have a whole event side usually, right? At these big hotels all over the country.
They have convention space.
They have convention space, right? And so, and then they have companies that are the production company of record that they use in those hotels. Okay.
Yeah, that's right. And a lot of the times it's exclusive. Like, you have to use that company sometimes. And then other times, you know, they charge you a liaison fee if you're going to bring in your own production company. That could be a couple $1,000s. That can be more. But Encore, in any case, is like a really big. I mean, they're in almost they're in so many countries. They're all over the place, and many hundreds of thousands of employees and stuff. But, you know, in Orlando has 12.5 million square feet of convention space. It is a massive, massive location by many factors. Outside of, I think, Chicago and a few other places, it's one of the largest. Vegas, probably. Vegas has much more, by many factors. But when I got there, and I was always kind of intimidated by corporate events, you know, because of the exactness of it, like, and you know, you really have to have a technical director there and stuff like that, and to call it, you know, otherwise the person operating this took some time for me to understand, but it's like going from high school to college. Really, it is. In high school, you know, it's like you have a test coming up and you're preparing for it and you get reminded, and then you get to college and your first semester you don't do well because you didn't realize no one's going to remind you to do these things, like, but now you're an adult and now you just need to deal with it like an adult. And, you know, that was sort of the best analogy I can make for the transition to go into corporate events. The person on that event, the video operator, is not going to take a cue unless you say, okay, go on cue. You know what I mean? And they're just not going to take, that's too much of a risk for them to just be like, now, you know? And so, you know, you get a lot more tech time, a lot more rehearsal time. The assistants to the executives will come in and tell you exactly what it is, and they'll look and see, like, that's a weird color or whatever. And then, you know, you get like an hour and you have a certain amount of time with the executive from the company to get that right, you know? And, you know, sometimes they're really in a rush. Other times they're great. And they're like, whatever you need, however long you need, let's just get it right. And we have the entire sales team here, or it's the whole company or something, you know? And so that's another thing about meeting people at that level. You know, they can, sometimes they're on or off. Like, they're either really cool or they're extremely demanding and short with you and they have no time, you know? And so that was like a real big different from weddings. That was like very different, you know, big jump. I was always intimidated by it, but I fell into it very naturally because I think that I kind of expect the same on a production going downward in the hierarchy from me. Like I expect people to be, even if it's like a little charity or whatever, it's like, doesn't matter. It's when it doesn't matter what the event is. It could just be like it could just be a quinceanera. It's the Super Bowl to the people walking in the room. It's big. It's that important. And I understood that a long time ago. And I always wanted to recreate, and I always wanted to make sure that they got wowed. But people didn't. I found that the people I worked with, and this is not to slight them in any way. I worked with a lot of really great professionals, people with a lot of love for the industry, but it wasn't until I got to Orlando and I was working for Encore that I really had a chance to delegate downward and say, like, you have an hour to get this done. I'm going to be over there with the video guy. We got the wrong lens or something like that, and we have to locate that, right? You want that person to be like half an hour later, be like, hey, I figured it out. It was just a something or whatever. It's all good. I'm going to lunch. And like to have that was like really exciting to move into that space, that corporate space.
What was the biggest corporate event that you did, man? You've told me about a couple, but what was the biggest one you ever did?
I don't even need to think about it. ACGME was the biggest thing.
What is that?
They are the company. So obviously this is Encore's client, not my client personally, but Encore gives you a lot of leeway to work with them. They just want to know that everything's going all right. They're not afraid of you stealing their client or whatever. That doesn't work. It's interesting that it doesn't really work that way in corporate. You're kind of stuck with whoever so they're not worried about that. They just want you to check in regularly and let them know everything's good. So ACGME is the American
Accreditation Council for Graduate Medical Education.
Wow, that's so amazing that you just happen to know that.
That's my job.
He just knew off the top of his head.
ACGME was amazing. So they are, yes, they are in charge of who becomes doctors. And they do a very big, who gets accredited and who doesn't. They're very cool. The leadership was great. I was working with my favorite producer who was out of Vegas, David Gardner. So it was like the dream team was really great. This was March, I think, 2023. And that was the biggest thing.
It was a massive convention. Or was it? Was it in Orlando?
It was in Orlando. It was in the biggest facility that we had, which was the Shingle Creek and Shingle Creek Rosen Center. And we had the entire building was being used, every single room. And we had the biggest room. Sebastian, I think, is the name of the room, and like 10,000 chairs. And so, but the thing is, we were broadcasting the output of that to every hotel room that they had, not only in the hotel, but at other locations. And so we're like broadcasting, outward down the internet. And there was a lot of coordination for that because you're working with the IT team and they don't work for Encore, it's a different company and stuff. And they let me, they wanted to do something different. I designed this layout for their chairs, which was like I call it sunburst. So it was like they were all kind of like in a semicircle around the stage, but all kind of facing the stage. It was really nice. They were very cool. They're very interested in tech. They always want to up the ante from last year. So I had a separate audio engineer in the back. I had two of them. One was controlling the recording, and he had his own control of it. It was a split. So he wasn't interfering with anything going on in the house. And I had another guy back there who was doing it to the streaming. And just the amount of they were, I told them, I want to bring people in a day early. I want to get everybody a big screen that they can use for the output of their computer. And they were just like, yes, yes, yes. So I really had days of tech. I had almost unlimited budget. I had the biggest property, and Encore gave me like the best people available. And it was big. It was flawless. It went literally flawless. They even said like that was the best one ever. And they've been doing it for like 26th year or something like that. We all looked great. Everybody looked great. Everybody prospered. It was just an epic event. And it was really big. And I'm sure there's people out there. I mean, there's people that do like do Super Bowl, and then that's like magnitude times bigger. But, to me, ACGME was perfect.
Yeah, that's no slouch. And 10,000 people. Good God. All right. I'd freak out. I'd freak out if I was in.
So that wasn't the biggest. I've worked on concerts, but that was the most important to me because I put a lot of work into it. I was very serious, took it very seriously, and I had everything I needed, and it turned out great. So it's like the best example of just being proud of something, you know.
Yeah, that's fantastic, man. That's why I wanted you on the show. I was like, again, it's the GOAT show, man. You're one of the greats of this in your field. So
You're just being nice.
no, well, okay. I mean, let's you go from that, and now let's talk about hard rock, man. It's like you're kind of back to where you were, right? Like doing, but at a totally, at a totally higher level. So, I guess with hard rock, it has to be exciting, man. You're dealing with like big acts, and it's also probably great because you're in one location, and you know, uh, you're able to sort of. With the corporate event stuff, you're kind of like all over the place, and I don't know if it's still. What's your thoughts on the current gig?
It's a little different.
Yeah, like we haven't even talked about this. I haven't had a chance to really talk to you about it because it's the newest gig.
I'm actually I'm glad we haven't, because maybe it's good just to hear something brand new and exciting, right? Like just between us or whatever, you know. But yeah, I mean, I've been pretty busy.
I mean, I'm gonna look at I'm gonna look at who's playing, bro. You gotta give me the inside track. I need ticks. You know what I'm saying?
I mean, we'll talk about it. I'm making any promises.
Well, okay. Well, how about like, is there anybody recently that you did a show production for that you were really excited about, or?
Okay, so the way that it works at Hard Rock is there's like a different department for everything. So Hard Rock Live is its own department, right? It's ran by the casino. So I work for the tribe of Florida. So I work for the Seminole tribe of Florida, who owns the Hard Rock, right? And so there is, and it sounds a little bit like semantics, but it isn't really because of the way that I don't know how to say it exactly, but there are people that specialize in certain things. So I came from this corporate background. I deal with a lot of the corporate side of things, or sometimes, they have Dare, which is the nightclub. So maybe I'll be doing something that's an extension of a corporate client that's in town, but they're doing an activation or something at Dare nightclub. So maybe I'll wind up over there, but I have colleagues who are here in the same offices of me that deal with different things. There are the tribal events where they're out at the reservation and they're doing like a bingo night or something. I mean, literally could be just that, or a concert. Promoters love doing concerts on the grounds of the Seminole tribe because they don't have to deal with a lot of the permitting process, And by the way, neither do I. I only really have to call the fire marshal in if I feel like maybe, it's kind of on me. But I feel like, man, there's a lot of tables in here. I feel like I don't have a lot of room, And in that case, it's really just up to me.
Because I don't think people really know this, that the Hard Rock is owned by the Seminole tribe of Florida. So, but you're saying you're not working for that particular, just the actual Hard Rock organization or facility. You're actually working for the people that own all these different Hard Rocks across the country.
That's exactly, and across the world.
And across the world, yeah. So it's not like you're doing, at least I'm assuming, like you're doing these corporate events for Encore and going all over the place, but it's still the same story here with the Hard Rock because you're working for the organization that owns all the Hard Rocks. And so yeah, but you're mostly in Hollywood, Florida, though.
That's exactly right. They are building a Hard Rock in Puerto Rico, and I got sent the drawings for that. It's just a big pile of dirt, but they're planning it right now, and so they sent over the drawings, and they wanted to know if they put the rigging points in the right spot, if it was sufficient the way that they planned it, or if they needed them in different spots. And so I looked at it. So my boss, the person that was the person that hired me, who's now my boss's boss, basically said, like, would you want to take a look at this and consult with them on this? And I said, yeah, absolutely. So and I'm looking at it, and they really didn't do. There's a lot to consider. you know. So, but I didn't really see them being in places that were helpful, you know. And I'm trying to imagine events. I'm looking like, where's the main doors to this room? Oh, that's a service hallway. Well, the rigging point should really be by a service hallway, because that's generally where the stage is going to go, opposite the entrance, right? So I was like looking at it, and I remember thinking like, wow, man, I've come a long way. And I remember thinking to myself, like, they put this task to me, and I'm looking at this, and I feel like I'm really considering this and come along. You know, it was a nice moment to be included in that. And so I marked it up. I said it'd be good if it was here. I put a fake stage, like just a rectangle. I'm like, if the stage was here, here's where you'd want the rigging. It should be a little bit off the wall. You'd want, you know, over there so you can get the stage wash and stuff. And they were like super thankful about it. They're like, this is great. We wish we had, you know, we wish we could do this on all the previous builds or whatever. So I got put to task for that. And then there's the one in Tokyo. I haven't heard anything about it yet, but I'm sure we'll get brought in at some point or other, you know. I don't think it's going to be the guitar.
All right, we're going to Tokyo, bro.
I'd be psyched. That would be so cool. So the gaming department handles like Hard Rock Live. So they're in the same hierarchy, but you go up 2 levels and down, and then it's like the person that's in charge of that. So it's the whole company that deals with that kind of stuff. I deal mostly, because it's my specialty, with the corporate clients that come in. And so they want to use the ballrooms. They want to set it up a certain way. They want, you know, they want to bring certain things in, and, you know, maybe it's bigger than the doors that are on the room. So we got to figure that out or whatever. And it's just a lot of that. And then obviously putting the whole show together. A lot of the times they don't have a creative team. Sometimes they do, but they need the graphics done or something, you know? So I work for Seminole Media Productions, which is part of the tribe. So we have a media department downstairs. We have a studio downstairs. You need something recorded, and everything's in-house. We'll do the Voice of God announcements for every single award winner. We'll do the signage for where to park, where to go. And it includes a lot more than I was used to, like such as sales. Like at Encore, I didn't have to deal with a lot of that. I got brought in by the time a lot of that was decided. And in this particular job, I'm doing a lot more of the sales portion leading up to the production. So, and just furthering my general knowledge of things. But I've helped out in Hard Rock Live before and stuff like that.
Yeah. I think we're getting close here to the end of the interview, but I have to ask you, man. I have to ask you, what's the dream gig? Not to say that Hard Rock is not the dream gig, but if you could have an artist come through the Hard Rock, somebody who's the one you're like, look, I could die tomorrow if this particular person came through the Hard Rock and I pulled off a great show for them.
You probably know who I'm going to say.
I think I do know. Well, I know one of two.
Why don't you take a guess?
All right, my guess, if they ever decided to tour, which they have not done, which they never will, is Boards of Canada. I would have to imagine.
That's right. Doing almost anything for Boards of Canada would be the pinnacle of my career, just because of how reclusive they are. Like, you know, that's a thing that some groups will have part of their character, is that they're like, oh, really mysterious, whatever. Boards of Canada is literally like,
bro, they're just Scottish, bro. They're just Scottish, bro. That's it.
It turns out they're just Scottish in the end. They're just weird.
For anybody who doesn't know who Boards of Canada is, which is a tragedy if you don't, they are a Scottish duo making very cool electronic music, have been doing so for many years, and they just have that special,
since like the 90s, right?
Yeah.
They just have this magic way of production that makes you simultaneously feel like it's something like from childhood you've heard before, and at the same time it's something new. And so many people try to imitate them, and they just can't. Yeah, for whatever reason, they just cannot nail it the way they do. You know,
the reason is it's not the music; it's the texture of it. Which is what, you know, a band could sound like another band, but that texture there, and I don't know how else to explain it other than that, right? Like you can go and you could download the patches and you could do the same sounds or whatever, but the feel is never going to be like. They are the monopoly suppliers of Boards of Canada. To answer your question a little bit more seriously, though, because it's not really a reality, and they haven't done a live show in 25 years. So I would love to work with Jethro Tull.
Are they still touring? They're still out there doing it?
Yeah, he's almost 90.
Get out of here. He still plays the flute and everything?
Everything. Stands on one leg. Some people like that. Paul McCartney's like that. Bruce Springsteen's like that.
But man, I thought the Toll would be, kaput by now, but I guess not.
They just came out with a new album.
What?
Yeah, it was like 3 weeks ago. It's good. It's actually good. The one before it was, I don't know what he was thinking.
For anybody who doesn't know who Jethro Tull is, we'll put some of their famous songs in the show notes.
Yeah, I would love to work with Jethro Tull. I would love to work with REM. I think that would be really cool if they come through. Billy Joel was coming through, and I was gonna be side stage for that, but that had to be canceled. I don't know if he has something going on. He's been very private about it.
I know you're a huge Billy Joel fan, so
yeah, Billy Joel was a big part of my life growing up. He was at the peak of his rock career at that time. So I think 93 was when River of Dreams came out. Pretty sure it was 93. Same year, I remember it because the same year The Sign by Ace of Base came out. I would love to work with Ace of Base.
Ace of Base, hell yeah.
Ace of Base, if you're watching this, let's talk about that reunion tour. I'll run the whole thing for you. I'll put it all together, okay?
Hell yeah. Let's do it. Well, listen, Mike, this has been awesome. You're a great guy. You're a consummate professional.
Hell yeah. Thank you so much for bringing me on.
Yeah, of course, man. I'm glad you came on because people should know who you are. People should be aware of what you do and your skill set. And obviously, having talked to you in this interview, man, like you know even more than I even understood. So I don't know who's got garbles going on here. But yeah, listen, man, thank you so much for coming on the Goat Show. Appreciate you as a friend and as it's inspiring. I like when my friends are really like great at things and have spent a lifetime developing skill sets, and I just find it really inspiring, and it's something that makes me want to also be the best at whatever it is that I do. So I appreciate you, Mike. And
well, we're hiring.
I mean, I don't know if I'm going to do that. I'm not going to climb on that thing, man. I mean, what's the money like? I mean, if the money's good, I'll climb up there and throw.
Hey, you got any work from home positions, bro?
Such a zoomer. No, actually, the tribe does not work from home. If I'm not at an event, I'm in this office. You know what? At first, I resented it, to be honest, but I see the value in that.
Yeah. Elon would agree with you. All right. Well, listen, man. Appreciate you coming on the Goat Show. For anybody who's into event production or whatever, Mike's the man. Listen to what he has to say. But with that, on the show, we like to toast the goats. So
I'm all ready for you.
All right. There you go. I know you had coffee. Cheers.
Cheers to everyone.
Man, we didn't even get into like the things that you really like your side hobbies, which you're also excellent at, which is making up.
Let's do it in a few weeks.
Okay, we'll do it in a few weeks. Like coffee and steaks. Mike is an excellent griller of steaks and makes amazing coffee.
This is gonna be a me and Mike show. I'm kicking you guys out. Me and Mike having coffee and steaks.
Listen, let me say one thing to anybody who's listening. If you want to get into this industry, Raveen, put my email down in the signature. And if you were thinking of doing this and you want a little advice or you don't know where to go, shoot me an email. I'm happy to talk to you about it.
Awesome. Great. We'll definitely do that. Okay. Fresh, as we get on out of here, what do the aspiring event production people and audio people and video wall people and what do they need to do with this episode?
Just like, subscribe, hit the bell, drop a comment, and send it to everybody.
Sounds like good advice to me.